So INC is again conducting a webinar, and today we are conducting on basic emergency obstetric care during COVID-19. And Madam Bright Mary from Japaigo will take this session. As we all don't know much about this, so I think you will be able to learn quite many things from this session. So over to you, Madam Bright Mary, and all the best.
Thank you, ma'am. Ma'am, are you sharing the screen?
No, please share the screen.
Okay. Is this okay?
Yeah.
A very good morning to one and all. I know for the past 2-3 weeks you were attending a series of webinar that was on COVID, the management of COVID, and also the past 2 days you all attended a session on the management of pregnancy during COVID situation. And yesterday we had a session on the family planning services as well as the abortion services, how to manage that during the time of COVID. So today in continuation of that, we will go in detail about what is the basic emergency obstetric care which we have to provide to a mother who is coming to our facility during the time of COVID. So at the end of the session, you all will be able to discuss briefly about, to get an idea about the maternal health scenario in India, and also enumerate what are the skills under the basic emergency obstetric care, and also will be able to discuss the basic emergency obstetric care during the period of antenatal. So as we all know that women are dying not because of a disease which we cannot prevent. So they are dying because the societies have yet to make the decision that their lives are worth saving. We know that none of the mother is dying, and the maternal death we can prevent. So this is a quote which has said by the previous president of FOGSI, Mamada Fatullah, during the World Congress during 1997. So the quote is quite much old, but this is one of the important factor which we all need to think about. So why the woman is dying and whether we need to prevent it or not. So reducing the maternal mortality rate is a challenge, but working together, we all can achieve the goal. Now let us see what is the maternal mortality ratio in India. If we see from the year of 1990 to 2015 to 17, there is a marked reduction of the maternal mortality ratio in India. Especially if we see in the 11th stage, they have even achieved the maternal mortality rate of less than 100 per lakhs live births during the past years. And India is also focusing on reducing the maternal mortality rate below 70 by 2030. It's a SDG, Sustainable Development Goal, which Government of India is focusing. So how Government of India or our country has achieved this? So due to increasing the institutional deliveries, then home deliveries, and also by providing various provision for the mother, so our country were able to decrease the maternal mortality rate. So now let's see what are some of the major causes of maternal mortality and whether can we prevent that. So if you see to this graph, the major causes of maternal mortality is hemorrhage, that cause almost 27%, and then it comes to hypertensive disorders, almost 14%, then sepsis, due to that 11% of the maternal death occurs, and due to obstructed labor 9% of maternal death, and because of abortion 8%, and other related causes 31%. So can we prevent that? So if we can identify these conditions and giving the preventive measures, then we can of course prevent and reduce the number of maternal mortality. How we can prevent? The first cause is maternal hemorrhage is one of the major cause of maternal mortality. If we look at the time of delivery, immediately after delivery, whenever we are delivering the placenta, if we are providing active management of third stage of labor, or by the administration of oxytocin or misoprostol, and also whenever the mother is having heavy bleeding and if she goes in shock, and by lot of blood transfusion we can reduce the, or we can prevent the maternal death because of hemorrhage. So when it is coming to sepsis, if a mother is having sepsis or infection, then we can prevent by administering appropriate antibiotics and maintaining infection prevention measures, and also by providing the tetanus toxoid injection. So the next major cause is hypertensive disorders. So by measuring the blood pressure of the woman during each visit, and also by administering antihypertensives and magnesium sulfate, we can prevent hypertensive disorders or the death due to hypertensive disorders. Then it's come to the obstructed labor. During intranatal period, 9% of the obstructed labor happens, and that can one of the major cause of maternal mortality. By monitoring the labor progress using a partograph and also appropriate intervention whenever a complications occurs, by taking appropriate measures, most of these obstructed labor, the management we can do on time. And when it is coming to abortion, how can we prevent? By providing appropriate family planning measures, and also by providing post-abortion care, we will be able to manage it. Yesterday, we had a detailed session by Dr. Bimla about the family planning services. So by providing all these services, we can prevent the maternal death. There is nothing which we cannot prevent. So what are some of the other causes of maternal death? I think apart from the direct causes of maternal death, we all needs to focus and we all should be aware of what are the other causes which is very much near to us. The three non-delays are: the first delay is delay in recognizing the problem. That is because of the lack of awareness of danger signs and deciding to seek care. So until and unless we are informing the women and her family, they will not be able to understand what are the danger signs, when should I come or when should I go to a facility. They will not be able to recognize that. That is one of the major cause. The second delay is delay in reaching the health facility. That is due to unavailability of the transport, the lack of awareness of the appropriate referral facility, maybe the ambulance services 108, 102 for the postnatal period. So this all they should be aware. So because of delay in reaching, especially if you see in the right now the COVID scenario, there are a lot of transport related issues are there. So they should be able to know, and they should be on touch with their healthcare provider, how they will be able to reach their facility to prevent this. And the third delay is delay in receiving the treatment once a woman has arrived at the health facility. This is when the first two is directly related to the woman, she is not aware, but the third delay is mainly related to the healthcare provider. Once they come to a facility, they are not able to receive a proper treatment due to inadequately equipped health facility. The health facility may be lacking many of the equipments, or there may be lack of trained personnel or emergency medicines. These all are related to the third delay. So similar to the previous direct causes of a maternal death, these three delays also we can prevent, and or we can give further measures and we can prevent the death due to these delays. How can we address these delays? The first is by sensitizing the community and family for the right decision at the right time and timely referral through pre-identified transports, which can address the first two delay. For that, in the current situation also, during COVID, if you see the first day session, Dr. Kirti has clearly explained what are the Government of India guidelines on providing services. And Government of India also focusing that instead of going to a higher level facility, a medical college hospital or a district hospital, women should be tried to go to the facilities which is near to their home. That is the sub-center or the health and wellness center or the PHC. So through telecommunication or through phone, the healthcare provider, be the A&M, be the staff nurse, be the ASHA worker, they should be in touch with the mother and give them the proper information. With that, we can prevent the first two delays. And also socioeconomic status of the women and family and other community awareness or birth preparedness, these are with all those things, and also giving them an information about the referral linkages, because in the current situation most of the facilities either they will not be able to receive the mother, or there may be some issues will be there. So whenever we are doing, or the healthcare providers are doing the telecommunication with the mother, they should be also able to guide them what are the referral linkages or the facilities which are very near to them. And the third delay can be addressed through the availability of good quality basic and emergency obstetric and neonatal services. Therein comes the importance of today's session, because as a healthcare provider in the current situation also, we all should be able to refresh or to further revise our knowledge as well as skill to provide a basic emergency services to the mother. So what is the need of a skilled birth attendant? As we all know that pregnancy and childbirth are normal events in the life of a woman, but and most of the majority of the pregnancies are result or which leads to a normal birth, and it is estimated that about 50% may develop complications, and we cannot predict. It may be during the antenatal period towards the end or towards the beginning of the intranatal period. The complication can be occur at any time, but the woman has to get a service by a skilled birth attendant is crucial for the early and detection as well as the appropriate and timely management of the complication. For example, if the mother is coming for a regular antenatal visit, maximum or majority of the complications we can identify or we can detect it early and provide the measures to prevent them. And Government of India also committed to ensure universal health coverage of birth with skilled attendants both at the institutional and at the community level to provide access to the emergency obstetric care to all the mother as well as newborn. So the healthcare providers need to technically competent, and the facilities should be adequately equipped to provide services and care to the women reaching the health facilities. So in the current situation also, it is the responsibility of each provider to identify so whether their facilities has the facility all the equipments to provide the basic care. If it is there, then immediate not there, then immediately they should make it stay not to the higher authority. So where is this BMOC services provide? So all the 24/7 facilities, that is a primary health center and non-FRU CHC. It's a non-first referral unit CHC, and they are conducting deliveries and management of medical complications which not require in surgery or blood transfusion and have a newborn corner. So in simple words, a BMOC facility will be provided in all the 24/7 facilities, and they should be able to provide the basic care and the newborn care, but there will not be any provision of the surgeries or blood transfusion. And also if you see all the sub-centers, that is the health and wellness centers nowadays, all the sub-centers is transformed into a health and wellness center, and the other PHCs where deliveries are conducted by the skilled birth attendants. Such facilities also can provide BMOC services. So here an important is all the nurse midwives should be proficient in identifying and managing the basic obstetric complications. So identification is the important aspects. So what are some of the BMOC signal functions? So Government of India is giving the BMOC signal functions. What a BMOC trained provider, a medical officer or a nurse or what are the services which they will be able to provide. The first one is the administered parental antibiotic. And the second BMOC signal function is administer uterotonics such as oxytocin. And third is administered parental anticonvulsants for preeclampsia and eclampsia. Example is magnesium's administration of the magnesium sulfate. And fourth is manual removal of placenta in case wherever the placenta is not delivered beyond 30 minutes of the delivery. And the fifth is remove retained products. That is example is manual vacuum extraction, dilatation and curettage. And six is perform assisted vaginal delivery such as vacuum extraction and forceps delivery. And seventh signal function is perform basic neonatal and resuscitation using bag and mask. So among all of these signal functions, we all should be aware that out of these 7, the 4 signal functions are as a nurse or as a ANM, we will be able to provide. But the 4th signal function, that is the manual removal of placenta, the removal of retained products, and the perform assisted vaginal delivery. These 3 functions are right now, it is not permitted for a nurse midwives to do independently. So today, out of the basic emergency obstetric care, we will focus mainly on the what are the care, emergency care which we have to provide during antenatal care. So what is a comprehensive antenatal care? So the first and important thing is registration of every pregnancy within first trimester. That means within the 12 weeks. That is the important aspect. And second has to ensure minimum 4 antenatal visits to monitor the progress of pregnancy. And even the first day of the presentation on management of pregnancy, in that also Dr. Kirti has clearly explained that minimum 4 antenatal visit has to be there even in the current situation to monitor the progress of the pregnancy. The routine antenatal visits which is suggested by Government of India is the first visits should be within 12 weeks of, preferably immediately after the pregnancy is suspected or confirmed, and second visit is between the 14 to 26 weeks, and third visit is between 28 to 34 weeks, and the fourth visit is between 36 and the term. Apart from that, 2 doses of injection tetanus toxoid or TD, tetanus and diphtheria injection. These days Government of India is recommending, and I hope that most of the state governments also is promoting the administration of TD injection at their facilities for a pregnant mother. And the dose is similar, 0.5 ml intramuscular has to be administered. The 2 dose, the first dose as per Government of India guideline, it is at the first visit, preferably if possible, and the second dose is just immediately after 1 month. That means 4 weeks after the first dose, the second dose has to be administered. So, and also give at least 100 IFA tablet, iron and folic acid tablet for the mother. But the mothers who already have or they are suspecting of anemia or their hemoglobin level is below 11 gram, then they will be able to, or they should be provided by with 200 tablets. That means in a day 2 iron tablet they should be given. So again, niche visit. It's the responsibility of the healthcare provider to a detailed history collection, even if it is a sub-center or PHC, whatever the facility or a higher facility. In each visit, the history as well as physical examination and abdominal examination has to be done to understand the progress of the delivery, the pregnancy, as well as also to understand is there any complications. And next is the laboratory investigation, such as for each visit, the hemoglobin, urine for sugar and protein has to be checked, and record the blood pressure at every visit, so that in the first slide we have seen that if you are recording the blood pressure frequently, we will be able to know that is there any variation in their BP, and with that we will be able to identify the chances of preeclampsia early. Then track every pregnancy by name for provision of quality ANC. So if you see the first day, the presentation, we have seen that high risk pregnancy, management of high risk pregnancy, for managing or identifying a high risk pregnancy, it is very important that each pregnancy has to be tracked from the very beginning onwards, and advise and encourage the woman to opt for institutional delivery also in the current situation also. So it is better they have to go to the institutional delivery, and do not give pregnant woman any medication during the first trimester unless it is advised by the physician, and also provide antenatal counseling. So already pregnancy itself is stressful even for the mother. So now because of the COVID situation, the mothers, they are more panic. So whether they will get whenever they are COVID, whenever they are coming to a facility, if comes, how they will manage, what are the measures which they have to take. So providing antenatal counseling is also an important factor, and maintain proper record. The MCP card has to be managed, or it has to be, all the things has to be documented in that. So we already discussed each visit the abdominal examination has to be done, and the major things in that we have to see the fundal height, whether it is appropriate to the period of gestation. If it is below or above the period of gestation on finding, then we have to be identify. There may be a chance of any complication. And also assess the fetal lie and presentation, and assess of the fetal movement as well as fetal heart sounds. So the birth preparedness is an important factor which will help the mother as well as their family to identify the complication and come to the facility whenever there is an emergency come. If you see, out of the 3 delays we have seen, the first delay was due to lack of awareness. They do not know what to do and where to come and what they have to monitor. So first, the healthcare provider, as a nurse, as an A&M in the facility, we all has to help the mother and their family to identify health facility and whether there is a skilled birth attendant is there for providing the care. If it is not there, and also if they have some high risk cases, what is in case of emergency, what is the other facility where they can go? And also identify birth companion. The birth companion can be either the mother or any other family member, husband, but any one birth companion can be allowed at the time of delivery, even during the COVID situation. But appropriate measures of infection prevention has to be taken whenever they are in the labor room. Then identification and transportation to the health facility, and what is the estimated cost. These days Government of India is giving various facilities for an antenatal mother insurance for and postnatal and during intranatal period. So we have to give them information about what are the various services is available, and we have to advise the family members to keep ready for all the supplies which are needed for the baby as well as for the mother. And whenever they come to a facility, all their antenatal care records has to be bring, and also inform them that in case of emergency can come at any time. In that case, please make some arrangement for a blood donors also in case of some emergency occurs. And if any danger signs occurs, then immediately come to the facility. That also an important factor which we have to tell to the mother as well as to the family members. So what are some of the symptoms indicating complications? So and this we have to inform them prior. So fever, it can be a symptom of infection. So whenever they have fever or persistent vomiting with dehydration, a simple nausea can be managed at their home, but if the vomiting is continuous and they are having dehydration, then they immediately they have to come to the facility. Whenever there is an abnormal vaginal discharge or some irritation in the vagina, and also if they have palpitation, breathing difficulty, and even whenever they are sitting simply, so that time also if they are getting more fatigue, in such cases they have to come to the facility. And generalized swelling of the body and the puffiness in the face, and severe headache and blurring vision, and whenever they are passing smaller amount of urine and there is a burning sensation on micturition is there, so that time they have to come. It can be a sign of UTI. And whenever there is a vaginal bleeding at any time during the pregnancy, immediately they have to come to the facility. And decreased or absent fetal movement, this also in the first session which was taken by Dr. Kirti, in that also it is mentioned we have to tell the mother, even if they are coming for 4 visits, it is very important that to tell the mother to manage or to note the fetal movements. So whenever there is a decreased or absent fetal movement, immediately they have to come to the facility. For checking the fetal count also, we can fetal movements also, we can tell the mother or how to provide a little education to the mother that immediately after each meal she should be able to check her fetal movements, and if it is feeling below 12 in a day, then immediately she has to come to the facility. And whenever there is a leaking of watery fluid or vagina, in these are some of the symptoms which indicates a complication in the mother. In such cases, they should be immediately coming to the nearest facility. If possible, they can go to a higher facility like PHC, CHC, but at least they should be coming to the immediate nearing facility to their home. So next is coming to the antenatal advices. Antenatal advices, not only during COVID, even during the normal period, it is highly important. The first is about diet during pregnancy. So there are many queries is there whether it is coming from the mother's side and other healthcare providers. Is there any need of any special diet during the time of COVID? Or a pregnant woman, she tested positive for COVID during pregnancy. So there is nothing. They can follow the as usual the balanced diet, and which is during pregnancy as well as the lactation period, because they need to meet the increased needs of mother and the baby. And take one extra meal a day during the pregnancy. As we all know that there should be an extra 300 kilocalorie has to be taken by the pregnant woman. A well-balanced diet consisting of a variety of food helps for the growth of the baby. So they have to take that. And some of the sources of essential diet which requires calcium, iron and vitamin and protein rich diet, and includes a lot of butter, ghee and oil. And again, I have mentioned here a diet for the pregnant women and COVID-19 infection should be as per the routine. There is no special diet, and there are a lot of myths that the women should not take chicken or mutton or fish. So they can take any food which they likes during pregnancy. So what are some other advices? The first and foremost thing is about personal hygiene. Now, even during COVID situation also, we have to tell the woman about the importance of, otherwise also personal hygiene is important, but specific precaution or measures they have to take for by taking the appropriate hand hygiene measures. By they have to take bath at least twice a day, and also have dental checkup. In the current scenario, it is not that possible because they will not be able to go to a facility, and most of the facilities they are not providing the routine services until and unless it is emergency. But if the women is having or they are having severe infection or some pain, then in such cases they can see any facilities are available. And they have to take a rest and sleep of minimum 8 to 10 hours, and avoid all the strenuous activities and other exposure to the hazardous chemicals and excessive lifting and exercises. Other than that, they can continue all the work as usual. So then it is coming to the exercise. We already told they can take some of or they can do some of the exercises, antenatal exercises, minimum 15 to 10 to 15 minutes daily, but they have to avoid all the risky and heavy exercises. Then breast care is very important. They have to see that is there any infection, on they have to clean regularly the breast at the time of bath, and also if any corrective measures has to be done. For example, if there is a retracted nipple, they have to how they have to do the corrective measures, that education also has to be provided. And smoking and alcohol, strictly it has to be avoided, and that is one of the major cause of preterm birth also. So other is comfortable clothing and shoes. So in the current time also, maximum they have to wear the clothes which are clean and try to wash their clothes separately from the family members if possible. And avoid the sexual activities, especially the sexual intercourse has to avoid during the first 3 and the last 2 months, as it can increase the risk of abortion. And travel, of course, now all the women are in lockdown, so there is no need to discuss much about the travel, but they have to avoid unnecessary travel. And even during the pregnancy, normally also they have to avoid the travel the first 3 and the last 3 months to avoid any complications. And whenever they are going to health facility, try to go to a facility where they can achieve their care easily. And drugs, all the drugs, avoid any medication unless it is prescribed by a doctor, and avoid the exposure to radiation, and also protect them from infections and illness. So for that, they have to come to facility whenever they are feeling complications, or if they have a sign of fever, then immediately they have to come to the facility. So reporting of untoward and signs and symptoms, this is again and again we have to tell the mother immediately whenever they are feeling any complications or any signs of a complication, then immediately they have to come to the facility. Apart from that, also we have to provide education for child care as well as the family planning services from the antenatal period onwards. So now let us discuss in detail about the complications during pregnancy and manage common obstetric complications and stabilize the women before referral. That is the one of the important aspects. So now the current situation, most of the facilities, they are not functioning, so they will come immediately to a sub-center or a PHC. So as a nurse or as a ANM in that facility, we should be able to at least identify what is the complication and give the immediate care for them, stabilize them, then we have to shift or refer them to a higher facility. There are a lot of complications. We will not be able to discuss everything in detail within this small time, but we will be focusing on only 2 or 3 major complications which can come to us in the current situation also. So one of the important thing is like vaginal bleeding. So the vaginal bleeding before 20 weeks of pregnancy, that means the during early pregnancy, and bleeding during late pregnancy, that means after 20 weeks. So bleeding after 20 weeks is called antepartum hemorrhage. So what are some of the causes of bleeding in early pregnancy? Either abortion or hydatidiform or ectopic pregnancy. These 3 are the major causes of a bleeding at the time of a early pregnancy. And when it is coming to a late pregnancy, causes like placenta previa, abruptio placenta, and ruptured uterus. These 3 are the major causes of a bleeding in the late pregnancy. So now let's see, when a woman comes to our facility, how we will identify whether she is having abortion or whether she is having placenta previa. Just in briefly we will see, and the important aspect is how to identify and how to manage them and then refer them to a facility. The first we will see about the threatened abortion. As all we know, threatened abortion is a spontaneous termination of the pregnancy, but the gestational sac will be intact and there is a possibility of continuation of the pregnancy further. And the major signs and symptoms, whenever a woman comes with slight bleeding with mild pain in the lower abdomen, and there will not be any history of expulsion of the product of conception. We already told the sac will be intact, so there will not be any expulsion of the products. And on examination, if we see abdominal examination shows the uterus will be softer than normal, the fundal height will be corresponds to the period of gestation. It will be appropriate to the period of gestation. And on pervaginal examination, the cervical os will be closed. So what is the management if a woman comes with a threatened abortion? So how you will manage at a sub-center or a PHC at the lower facility? So advise her to take rest at the home and also send her to the medical officer in a higher facility with a referral slip. Whenever we are sending a health provider is sending them to a higher facility, the important factor is send them with a referral slip, wherein you have to mention that on when they come, what are the conditions, what are the signs and symptoms were present. So with that clearly it has to be mentioned and then refer them to the higher facility. And if possible, it is always better the healthcare provider, or if you are providing care, we have to have a talk with the higher facility. We are referring so and so mother to the facility. So next is incomplete abortion. So incomplete abortion, the entire process of abortion has already started, and the remnant, the abortion has started but the not completed yet, and the remnants of the products of consumption remain inside the uterine cavity and cause bleeding. If you see in the first slide, we have seen what are the major causes of maternal death. In that, bleeding was, the hemorrhage was one of the important cause. So incomplete abortion is one of the case wherein we have to be very vigilant and give appropriate care, because half of the products of conception will be inside the uterus. If you are not identifying on time, then the woman can go into further complication like continuous bleeding, shock. So identification is highly important. What are the signs and symptoms? Heavy bleeding will be there with lower abdominal pain. And on history, there will be history of expulsion of the products of concepts. The mother may be saying the products of concepts is already expelled or it is visible outside the vagina. So on examination shows the presence of uterine tenderness and fundal height will be less than the period of gestation, as half of the products are already expelled, and oils may be open, and also there will be products of conception can be visible in the vagina. So what is the measure as a healthcare provider, what are the immediate measures which we have to do in our facility? So if retained products are seen, some of the products are seen outside the vagina, immediately remove them gently with a finger. That is called digital evacuation. But whenever we are doing that, we must carry all the procedure of aseptic condition. All the full protection of infection prevention has to be maintained when it is removed by the finger. And still if the bleeding continues and woman is going in shock, then we have to monitor the vital signs immediately, and also administer IV fluids, establish IV line immediately, and give them a IV fluid of ringer lactate or normal saline rapidly at the rate of 40 to 60 drops per minute. Then we have to refer the woman to the higher facility, that is the FRU. FRU is a facility wherein all the services like the service of the obstetrician, the pediatrician, the medical and surgery, all the facilities will be available in FRU. The first referral unit is called. It can be a sub-district hospital, it can be a district hospital, and even it can be a CHC, community health center. So this is the management in a lower facility. But just want to mention that if it is going to higher facility, what is the main management? So that means it is in a district hospital or a medical college hospital. So if the incomplete abortion is there, so the woman has to undergo a uterine evacuation after the general assessment of the condition, as well as stabilizing the mother if she is in shock, manage her condition, then again do the assessment, then perform the uterine evacuation. In India, the Abortion and Legal Act of MTP 1972 are provide free of cost services. Yesterday, Dr. Kirti had taken a session on abortion, and I hope you all are clear at least what is the basic services are available and how to provide it. Next is complete abortion. So the products of conception are expelled completely. Here the major signs and symptoms will be light bleeding will be there, or there has been heavy bleeding which has now stopped. The mother may say, I had bleeding heavily for the past 2 days or 1 day, and now it is stopped or decreased. And there will be lower abdomen, she will be having a history of or lower abdominal pain and history of expulsion of the product of conception. And on examination, if you see, the uterus will be softer than normal. The fundal height will be less than the period of gestation. For example, if it is 20 weeks or 19 weeks, so the uterus will be, the size of the fundal height will be less than that, and the os will be closed because the product is already expelled, and on examination the os will be closed, and bleeding may be slightly present sometimes, or sometimes it may be absent. So what is the management which has to do at the sub-center level or a lower facility? So observe the woman for 4 to 6 hours. When she comes to a facility, we cannot immediately send her back. Yes, nothing is visible, none of the products of conception is there. We cannot immediately send her back. Observe the woman for 4 to 6 hours and explain her the facts that the abortion is already happened, and also providing a counseling to reassure her is very important, and send her home only after checking her vital signs and ensure that her condition is stabilized. And also advise her to come back if she has bleeding resumes, or she can directly go to a higher facility where she can go and consult a medical officer. So this is a snapshot again of the what all things which we already discussed: the threatened abortion, incomplete abortion, and complete abortion. We have seen what are the major signs and symptoms and how we have to manage. So care and advice after an abortion, this is very important. So we have to tell the mother, the healthcare provider has to inform the mother that they have to come for a follow-up visit. That is, whenever there is a presence of increased bleeding and bleeding is not decreased even after 1 week, foul smelling vaginal discharge, or there is abdominal pain or fever, or she feels like she's unwell, any weakness, dizziness, in such condition, immediately she has to come to the facility. And we also has to give some advice about the self-care, like she has to take rest for a few days, use disposable sanitary napkins, and wash the perineum daily with soap and water to avoid any infection, and also avoid the intercourse till the bleeding stops. So next is another important thing is post-abortion family planning. Immediately after the family abortion, you have to provide her the information about the post-abortion family planning. So on counseling, what are the methods are available? So that has to be explained to her. And if she is willing to insert a post-abortion IUCD, that facility can be provided her. And if she is not present with any of the infection, then only it can be done. If a delay of 6 weeks or more in resumption of the menstrual cycle post-abortion, she should be go to the medical officer for an examination and advice. So next is about the vaginal bleeding in the later pregnancy after 20 weeks. That's called the APH, antepartum hemorrhage. What are the major causes? The main causes is one is placenta previa. So the placenta in this condition will be lying at or near the cervix. If you see the picture here, it is normal placenta, how it is looks, and marginal, if the placenta is lying in the marginal level, so how it is, and the complete placenta previa, how it looks. You can identify from the image. And other important cause is abruptio placenta. In that the placenta will be detached from the before the birth of the fetus. And here the important, and also the other cause is rupture of uterus. Here the important factor is whenever they are coming to a facility, how to identify whether the bleeding is due to placenta previa or abruptio placenta. We are not going in much in detail, but still want to mention that in placenta previa there will be bright red bleeding will be there, and that will be, there will not be any pain for the mother. Whereas in abruptio placenta, the bleeding will be dark in color and it is present with bleeding. So immediately whenever the mother comes, both the case establish an IV line and start the IV fluids, that is the normal saline and or ringer lactate, and measure her vital signs. All the vital signs has to be measured, and there should not be, we are not supposed to do the per vaginal examination in case of bleeding which is beyond 20 weeks of pregnancy, and immediately has to refer after stabilizing the mother by providing IV fluids. Immediately need to refer the mother to a first referral unit or a higher center. And also if the family members are there, tell them to arrange some blood donor as she lost a lot of blood. This is the management at sub center or in a lower facility. So just we will go through a management. What is the management which can do after 20 weeks of pregnancy if the bleeding occurs and if they are in a higher facility? So here the expert management, what a nurse or an ANM or any healthcare providers in the lower facility, what they can do, we already discussed. But when it is coming to higher facility, we need a management by a expert, either an obstetrician or a medical officer, and do all the vital signs monitoring has to be done, and resuscitate them as necessary, ask them about the history of pain, check the uterine contour and tenderness, and exclude the local causes by a medical examination. And we already discussed they should be arranged blood transfusion. And the important thing is confirm the diagnosis by a ultrasonography if available in the facility. And as per the condition, whether if the mother is in labor right now or can we wait to conduct their delivery, so immediate or expectant management, the decision will be taken by an expert, and accordingly either it will be conducted as a normal vaginal delivery or they can post them for a cesarean section. So ruptured uterus, rarely conditions come to a lower facility, but still if such condition is coming to a facility, we should be able to identify them. So there will be bleeding will be there, and history of labor followed by sudden cessation of the pain. The pain will be coming and then it suddenly stops. And those that are having a previous history of LSES or a tender abdomen, so in such cases there are more chances of a rupture of uterus, and the fetal heart rate will be absent. And in such case, when they comes to a higher facility, laparotomy and a repair of the uterus, or in severe cases there will be, so hysterectomy has to be done. So the one thing which all the providers has to be ensure, be prepared for a PPH in case of all APH. If the mother had already undergone antepartum hemorrhage or she had antepartum hemorrhage, then there is mostly chance of a PPH. So you have to be more vigilant. So if it is ectopic pregnancy, if the fertilized egg is implanted other than the endometrium, so for that we call it as a ectopic pregnancy. It can be tubal pregnancy or sometimes in the abdomen. So in that case also, the women may have the symptoms of abdominal pain, amenorrhea and vaginal bleeding. So here we will not be able to manage anything, and only we will be able to stabilize the mother's condition and refer her to a higher facility immediately for the emergency care. So the next important, the first major cause is bleeding. In that we discussed or we have seen about abortion as well as the APH, how to manage that if in a lower facility. Next important or the second leading cause of maternal mortality globally as well as India is preeclampsia and eclampsia. So can we prevent that or can we manage that? Is recording of the monitoring of the blood pressure and urine protein examination of all the pregnant women at each visit is very important. With that we can maximum or majority of the cases we will be able to identify early. And timely identification of the all the associated danger sign, and giving injection magnesium sulfate in all mothers having severe preeclampsia and eclampsia also can be able to manage the condition, the extent. So whenever a woman or person have blood pressure more than 140 systolic pressure and 90 diastolic pressure on a 2 consecutive readings 4 hours apart, then we are saying that he or she is having hypertension. So some of the mothers, they may be having chronic hypertension. Whenever a woman is having hypertension or blood pressure more than 140 by 90 millimeter of Hg before 20 weeks of pregnancy, we are always calling as chronic hypertension. But if the woman is called as pregnancy induced hypertension, only if hypertension occurs after 20 weeks of pregnancy. So apart from that, we have preeclampsia and severe preeclampsia. So whenever the blood pressure is increased more than 140 by 90, but it will be below 160 by 110 with a proteinuria, the presence of protein in the urine with a trace of 1 plus or 2 plus, that we are calling as a preeclampsia. But what is severe preeclampsia? Whenever the blood pressure is, the systolic pressure is more than 160 and the diastolic pressure is more than 110 with a proteinuria on an examination is 3 plus or 4 plus, that is called severe preeclampsia. Along with that, some of the other symptoms or warning signs also will be present, like headache, they may be having a blurring of vision, epigastric pain or oliguria, the urine output will be less than 400 within 24 hours, and also abnormal edema over the face, hands, abdomen and vulva. So along with this high blood pressure and with the presence of any of these symptoms, then we are calling that the mother is in a severe preeclampsia condition. So whenever there is a preeclampsia which is complicated with convulsion, for that we are saying eclampsia. So has to note that any convulsion in pregnancy and labor and postpartum period should be considered eclampsia unless it is proven otherwise. The prevention of preeclampsia, we already discussed that every visit there is need of managing or monitoring the blood pressure. Apart from that, our country guideline also, WHO as well as Government of India guideline also mentions that the women should be provided with calcium supplementation for 6 months during ANC period and after first trimester and 6 months during the lactation period. This can prevent or reduce the chances of preeclampsia. So if the women, if she get preeclampsia, and what are the some of the suggestions or follow-up care which has to do in our facility, or what are the some of the advices which we can give to her whenever she has preeclampsia? Advise the woman to come to the sub-center for a checkup twice a week regularly. So in the situation of COVID also, try to see that through a telephonic conversation, we have to ensure that or ask her, is there any complication? Is she feeling blurring of vision, dizziness? Any of the signs and symptoms we have to ask. So in case if she is not able to come to a facility within 2 weeks or twice a week, so then we have to suggest them what are the alternatives, or whenever she has severe symptom, then she has to come to the facility. And monitor blood pressure and urine for and fetal condition on each visit. encourage her to take a normal diet. There is no need of restriction of a salt or fluid whenever a woman have preeclampsia. And advise her to have an institutional delivery. So whenever the woman is already, she is in complicated stage, so the better the delivery has to be done in a higher facility under the care of a expert like obstetrician. So the warning signs already we discussed, and also if she has any complication, refer her to 24-hour primary health center or a first referral unit if any complication occurs. She should be managed at home as per the advice of the medical officer. The initial if the woman is suffering from, or if she has eclampsia at a sub-center and she comes to a sub-center, so how it has to be managed. So the supportive care is the important things, and also ensure that her airway is clear and she is breathing well. And if the woman is unconscious, position her on a lateral position so that the risk of aspiration can be reduced. And also clean the mouth and nostrils by applying a gentle suction and remove the secretions if the facilities are available at the center. And also remove any visible obstruction or foreign body from her mouth. Additionally, can be keep a mouth gag between the upper and lower jaw to prevent the tongue bite, but do not attempt it during the time of convulsion. And the important thing is administer the first dose of magnesium sulfate injection and refer to a first referral unit. So many of the situation, it's happening that whenever a woman is coming with a eclampsia or severe preeclampsia, directly the healthcare providers are sending them to a higher facility without even giving the first dose of magnesium sulfate. So all the nurses and all the ANMs are permitted to provide or administer magnesium sulfate without prescription of a doctor at any facility. So that can be do. There is no need to wait for the prescription by a doctor. And also ensure that we are keeping her in a left lateral position. So, and also do not leave her alone. Lift the bedside rails, and in the current situation, during the COVID situation, in the facilities also, we can always allow at least one family member along with her. So, but has to ensure that all the infection prevention measures are maintained and the social distancing is maintained within the facility. And maintain the record of the vital signs. Continuous monitoring has to be done, and immediately arrange for a referral to the first referral unit. And ensures that we have to administer the first dose of a magnesium sulfate injection to her. But always ensure that once we are giving the first dose, within 2 hours, she has to reach to a higher facility. And any of the healthcare providers, if available, has to accompany the woman to the first referral unit. But at the current condition, if the delivery is imminent, we feel the healthcare providers feels like the mother, she will not be able to reach the facility within 2 hours or 3 hours. In between, her delivery may occur. In that case, we have to give the first dose of delivery and try to manage the magnesium sulfate and try to conduct the delivery at the facility itself. Once her condition is stabilized, immediately refer both the mother as well as the baby to the higher facility. This is the overall management. It is a diagrammatic representation. So, role of antihypertensives in case of eclampsia or severe preeclampsia, antihypertensive can be administered, but we have to ensure that the nurses can administer antihypertensive only with the prescription of a medical doctor or obstetrician, and it can be administered only there under their supervision. Whereas magnesium sulfate, we are already permitted to administer that as a life-saving measure for the mother to reduce the complication. So what are some of the antihypertensives which are currently using in our country? So the one is, whenever there is, always ensure that the antihypertensive needs to be given if the diastolic blood pressure is more than 100 milligram of mercury as per the government of protocol or preeclampsia. And tablet alpha-methyl-dopa or tab labetalol can be used for controlling the BP, or target should be always ensure that her BP is maintained between 90 to 100 mm of mercury. And in case of severe preeclampsia, use of tab nibudipine or injection labetalol is recommended for the initial control of the BP. But I think there is no need to much discuss about this, as we are not permitted to manage at a lower facility. So how to administer or magnesium sulfate? The government, again, I want to reiterate that magnesium sulfate used by nurses in case of severe preeclampsia and eclampsia, the first dose of magnesium sulfate can be given and then can be referred the mother, and it is a safe drug, and cases of eclampsia should be then referred to a higher facility. Ensure that the mother, whenever we are transferring her, all the basic life support measures has to be there in the vehicle which is provided. And if the woman is conscious, also we have to, before giving an administrating magnesium sulfate injection, we have to tell that we are giving your medication to reduce your condition and you may feel warmth. She may feel little discomfort on administration of the magnesium sulfate. So this is the dose of a magnesium sulfate. So first dose, whatever we are saying, that is a non-FRU level. The FRU level, already I discussed what is a FRU. So total 10 gram of magnesium sulfate has to be administered. So 5 gram, that means 10 ml of magnesium sulfate deep IM in each buttocks. So the first dose is 10 gram of magnesium sulfate. 10 gram is equal to, so the 5 gram will be, in that 10 gram, 5 gram will be giving to one buttock deep IM, and the other 5 gram will be giving to the another buttock will be giving. So patient should be referred to a FRU within 2 hours. So for that, what are the equipments or should be ready with us? 10 ampules of 50% of magnesium sulfate. In our country currently, most of the facilities, especially in the public sector facilities, the magnesium sulfate which is coming is 50% of magnesium sulfate, and there should be 2 syringes should be there, because 5 gram, that is 10 ml, we will be giving in one syringe with a 22 gauge needle, and another one more syringe to load another 5 gram. But what is the loading dose? So we are permitted in a lower facility, all the healthcare providers are permitted to give only the first dose, then we have to refer. The loading dose, that is the 40 grams, that is will be able to give only when a mother is coming to a higher facility. So that 14 gram is 4 gram, that is 8 ml of magnesium sulfate, that will be diluted in the 50% solution which is coming, that we have to dilute to a 20% of the solution. So for that we have to take 4 gram of magnesium sulfate, that means 8 ml. So, and it has to be diluted with 12 ml of normal saline, then it has to be injected slow IV over 5 to 10 minutes. And followed by that 5 gram, that means 10 ml of magnesium sulfate with 1 ml of 2% lignocaine. So lignocaine also we will be loading towards the end, so that the injection is highly painful, so the mother will be get relieved because of the pain. So lignocaine also can be administered. So when it is coming to a higher facility, after administering 14 grams of magnesium sulfate, we have to maintain the dose by giving a maintenance dose. That is again 5 gram of magnesium sulfate. That is 1 ml is equal to, along with that 1 ml of lignocaine also can be added and give to alternative buttocks every 4 hours. For example, 10 o'clock, if you already given a medicine or the full loading dose, that means 14 grams we have given to a mother, then after 4 hours we have to give her a 5 gram of magnesium sulfate in her right buttocks, just an example. Then again after administration of that 4 hours we have to give that to the left buttocks. So, and to be continued it for 24 hours. So here we will see just a diagrammatic representation of what we discussed about the magnesium sulfate. The magnesium sulfate is coming in 50% of solution. 1 ampule is equal to, that is a 2 ml, and that is 1 gram of magnesium sulfate. And at a lower facility, for example, it's a CHC or PHC, if you want to give where IV dose, we will not be able to give, only we will be able to give IM dose. For that, what we have to do is we have to take 5 ampules of magnesium sulfate. That means 5 gram of magnesium sulfate and 10 ml. 5 gram is equal to 10 ml, and we have to load that in a 10 ml syringe, then administer deep in one buttock. For example, that is the right buttock. Then again, and we have to load another 5 more ampules, that is again 10 ml, load in a syringe of 10 ml and administer in the left buttocks. This is completes the first dose of a magnesium sulfate which any healthcare provider or any nurse or ANM can give to a facility. After giving this, immediately writing all the details in the referral note, and we have to send them to a higher facility. So this is the loading dose which usually we all are permitted to give without any prescription, and the drug is so. So if the patient, after coming to a facility, so after giving this medicine, we are referring the mother to a higher facility. So after reaching the facility within 2 hours, what we have to again administer is we have to give a IV loading dose of 4 more ampules. So 4 ampules is equal to 8 ml. To make that 50, usually 50% solution is coming, we have to make that to a 20% solution. For that, 4 ampules will be taking, that is 8 ml, adding 12 ml of normal saline or distilled water, and that will be loaded in a 20 ml syringe and give a slow IV over the 5 to 10 minutes. This is the condition when they are coming to a lower facility, then when we are referring to a higher facility. But just an example, if the mother is directly coming to a district hospital or a medical college or a other higher facility, then we have to give her a full loading dose of 14 gram. That means 4 gram IV and 10 gram IM together. So I hope in this picture it is clear so how many ampules we have taken. The same way we have to continue. So after this dose, we have to maintain the maintenance dose, that is only in a higher facility, wherever only after the administration of the full dose or the complete loading dose of 14 grams. So after the administration of the magnesium sulfate, so we have one of the important things which we have to see is we have to see the toxicity. So watch for toxicity signs before every maintenance dose, that is urine output. If it is below 25 to 30 ml per hour, and if there is an absence of knee jerk or respiratory rate of less than 16 minutes, this we have to check immediately after the administration of the MgSO4, and this is a sign of the magnesium toxicity. So now withhold the next dose of magnesium sulfate in case of if any of the toxicity is present. For example, if the respiratory rate is below 16 per minute, so the next dose of a maintenance dose of 5 gram we will not be administered to the mother. But and also we have to give an antidote of calcium gluconate 10 ml 10% in 10 minutes time. Slow IV has to be given. So this is the recurrent. If the woman is getting after administration of magnesium sulfate, again if she is getting a recurrent episode, so this will be managed only at the higher facility. Half dose of the IV, that means usually we are giving IV 4 gram. So instead of that, whenever there is a repetition or recurrent episode of eclampsia is there, then we can provide 2 gram of magnesium sulfate. And still after that also we cannot continue or again give this dose. If the convulsion is not controlled, then can be give diazepam 5 to 10 mg IV, and it may be repeated every 10 to 15 minutes up to a maximum of 30 mg dose, and this will be given at the higher facility. So along with that, if it's in a higher facility, we also has to provide her a left lateral position, and if she is having breathing difficulty, then administer oxygen by mass 6 to 8 liter per minute and start an IV fluid, either ringer lactate or normal saline, and catheterize if required. And also prepare her for cesarean section if the fetus is not, or eclampsia is not controlled, and if there is a failed induction or fetal distress is there, or the mother's condition is deteriorating, in that case we have to provide this. So the third leading cause, especially during pregnancy, if you are not managing, that can be the preterm birth of a neonate or preterm birth, and that is one of the major cause of the neonatal death in the country. And globally, if you are checking, India is the country which has a neonatal mortality or death because of preterm delivery. The rate is high. So preterm birth, whenever the baby is delivered before 37 weeks of pregnancy, then we are calling it as a preterm birth. And some of the conditions like antepartum hemorrhage or premature rupture of membrane or severe preeclampsia, eclampsia, some of the genital tract infection, these are some of the conditions which leads to preterm birth. So this is the management of preterm birth. So to prevent, if the baby is delivered before 34 weeks or 37 weeks, the baby's lung maturity will not be there. So in that case, the healthcare provider, a staff nurse or A&M, even in a lower facility, without the prescription, a doctor can administer antenatal corticosteroid. But they have to do correct and proper assessment of the gestational age has to be done, and also ensure that whether the mother is in a true labor or not. And it can be administered between 24 to 34 weeks of gestation. If a mother comes with the symptoms of preterm labor between 24 to 34 weeks, then can be given antenatal corticosteroids. So whenever this medicine is administered, it will cross the placenta and reach the fetal lung, and that will further stimulate the production of the surfactant. If the surfactants are not adequately present, that can lead to the lung collapse, and there will not be the exchange of the gas will not be happen. So antenatal corticosteroid therapy, once the medicine is administered and the mother is delivering after 24 hours or up to 7 days after the administration, then only the effectiveness will be its highest maximum. But the medicine is administered and within 24 hours or early, if the mother is delivering the baby, then partial effect only will be there. So what are the drugs and dosage? In our country, we are mainly using or we are permitted, the healthcare provider is permitted to administer dexamethasone injection. It is 6 mg and it has to be administered deep intramuscularly 12 hours apart, 4 doses. So there will be maximum 24 mg will be there. This injection has to be administered deep IM. The dose has to repeat every 12 hours. Like that, 4 dose has to be given for the mother. In case if dexamethasone is not available in our country, majority of the facilities dexamethasone is available. If not available, also can give injection betamethasone. But the dose, if you see, it is very easy to remember. So here the dose will be 12 mg intramuscularly, 12 hours apart, 2 doses can be given. So when to give an antibiotic, what are the indications to provide antenatal corticosteroid and what are the contraindications? So indications when the mother is in true labor between 24 to 34 weeks, and also there are some conditions which can lead to imminent delivery in case of antepartum hemorrhage, premature rupture of the membrane, and severe preeclampsia and eclampsia. These are some of the indications, and it is contraindicated in the case of a frank chorioamnionitis, the infection of the chorion and amnion. In that case, it cannot be administered. And some of the signs and symptoms of chorioamnionitis are whenever there is a fever, the lower abdominal pain, foul smelling vaginal discharge, and tender uterus, and also maternal and fetal tachycardia will be present. In such condition, we will not be able to administer antenatal corticosteroid. Other than that, in all other conditions, it can be administered very safely to the mother. What is the role of a A&M or a nurse midwife in management and referral whenever a mother is coming with preterm birth? If the mother is in true labor, give the recommended dose. If it is a lower facility, usually it is recommended that the first dose out of, we are telling dexamethasone 6 mg, 4 doses, 12 hours apart. that can be given the first dose, then they can refer to a higher facility. But in the current situation, due to lack of transportation and any other issues, if they are not able to send the mother to a higher facility for giving further dose or manage, then the remaining doses also can be given at any facility like the subcenter or PHC, anywhere it can be complete. The entire course has to be completed. So in the case of delivery is imminent, prepare her for the delivery, and all the measures for resuscitation also of the baby has to be ready at the facility. And immediately after delivery, the baby has to be referred to a nearest special newborn care unit, the SNCU, after appropriate stabilization with a duly filled referral slip. The referral slips about the administration, the conduction of delivery, the baby's present situation, everything has to be mentioned. And also ensure that the temperature of the newborn is maintained during transportation. So which corticosteroid should be given? There are two options, dexamethasone as well as betamethasone. But if you see in our country, dexamethasone is more recommended and it is more available over betamethasone. And also it is inexpensive, and the important thing is the drug is heat stable. There is no need to refrigerate. If a lower facility do not have a refrigeration facility, in that case also we can use the medicine. So dexamethasone is more safe and more recommended. And oral preparation of the steroids are not to be used. It has to be injection, and ANCs have a role even in surfactant replacement is available. Even if these antenatal corticosteroids we are administering, managing, the importance of regular antenatal care is highly essential. And repeated courses or more frequent dose. The recommended dose only should be administered. Should not be provided an extra dose thinking that no, the mother may get benefit with this injection, the baby may get benefited. It should not do that. Further, it will harm the baby. The baby may develop some of the neural defects can be occur. So in summary, if you see, the provision of a quality maternal care promotes the well-being of the women and their newborns. And the important factor is early identification of all the complications and prompt referral. So whenever it is telling prompt referral, give the immediate measures from our level, what all is possible in that facility, then only refer the baby to or mother to a higher facility, and that will help to reduce the maternal mortality in our country and to reach the sustainable development goals. And the various resources which has been used for the presentation is the Government of India MNS guideline. There are some other guidelines also is there. So these are the guidelines which has been used. All of you can refer. I think some of the guidelines are already uploaded in the INC website also. Thank you. So we all can pledge to work together for the betterment of the women's health. So identification and referral is the important aspect. Thank you.
Thank you. Can you stop the share, Bright? Yeah. Thank you so much, Bright. It was a wonderful experience for us. I mean, the slides were done very well and the presentation was very good. I think a lot of comments have come complimenting you that you have done a wonderful job.
Thank you.
So congratulations once again. So we do have many questions over here, but I think today's already 12:15. We have only 5 or 10 minutes. We'll not take much questions today. We can turn into FAQ. We can make it in FAQ. But people had the problem. See, look, you have to go to www.Indian Nursing Council, INDIANNURSING Council.org. In that we have a COVID-19 webinars. So if you click that, there you can get all the videos, and you can also get through the YouTube. And there you can subscribe to the YouTube. But today, from yesterday afternoon, we have an issue on our server. Maybe it will be resolved today because of lockdown, even that office is closed. So you all have to bear with us because of lockdown. To yesterday's video and today video will take time because you cannot access our Indian Nursing Council website because of the server is down. So anyway, the questions we'll take up, there's a lot of questions. I think Pearl has answered many of them, and I'm happy. Thank you, Pearl, for doing that. And we have some questions. We'll take it up. If a pregnant woman is COVID positive and is not able to breathe properly, then how can we say that there can be no complications in baby, as the fetus can suffer from asphyxia and gradually respiratory distress? So anybody would like to answer that?
Dr. Kirti, would you like to respond to that?
Yeah, I think as we covered in our webinar on Monday, there is no extra, as of now, there is no evidence that pregnant women suffer any extra respiratory complications as compared to a normal COVID patient. So whatever respiratory problems a pregnant woman would have, ordinary person would have, non-pregnant would be there by a pregnant woman also, which means that 85% will have hardly any symptoms, or they will be asymptomatic or very mild symptoms, and 5% will have severe complications. Now coming to the baby, if the problem is very, very severe, which occurs only in something like 5%, then yes, maybe there might be some effect on the fetus, but it has not been documented. It is all it is all skeptical, and there is no confirmation of that. But otherwise, in 95%, we do not expect any major complications occurring in the baby, like asphyxia.
Thank you, ma'am. There's one more question. How many maximum times a woman can undergo LSCS? I think Dr. Kirti again.
Yeah, I think it is not related to any of these webinars. But,
yes.
Yeah, see, it depends on the health system's capacity. I know of some cases where a woman has undergone even up to six times she has undergone LSCS. But in India, generally we advise that a woman should not need to undergo more than 3 maximum. That is a maximum. So it is advised that a woman should try to adopt some family planning method after 2 cesareans.
Okay, one more question is, I think, Bright, you may answer that. Do the symptoms of pre-eclampsia subside by the delivery, or they continue to appear? And if yes, then till how much time the BP will remain high? What advice should a nurse provide to women with pre-eclampsia in a postpartum period?
So for many of the women, if they are having preeclampsia during pregnancy, post-pregnancy also, there is a chance of continuing that. They may be going to hypertension so long. Okay, some others, it may be coming back or resume back, and some they may be continuing. And the important thing is immediately after, even if during pregnancy or intranatal period, as well as in postpartum period also, the healthcare provider has to be monitor the blood pressure continuously till we feel that she is becoming or coming to normal. And if her condition is worsening, if there is a need of antihypertensive, then the obstetrician can prescribe that, and she has to continue that till her blood pressure comes normal. But majority of the cases, there is a continuation of cases, or the subsequent pregnancy, there is more chance of getting preeclampsia.
Okay, thank you. If an anemic mother is transfused with one bag of wrong blood group during labor by mistake, then what can be the complications to fetus and how to manage it? It is not this, it is in general in question.
Dr. Vimla, will you like to address that?
Yes, I will like to address that. Wrong blood transfusion. Am I audible first of all?
Yes, Dr. Vimla.
So we have to be, it's a medical negligence to give a wrong blood group to a woman, and the blood group has to be properly matched and compatibility has to be tested. And if it is given, the woman may go into anaphylactic shock, and that could be a life-threatening condition for her. And it has to be properly done. There is no way that we say that wrong blood group is transfused to the woman. So if it is done, then it is an emergency, and it has to be managed as an emergency, as a treatment. Treatment is as like of a shock. The woman may go into shock.
When the iodine and folic acid should be administered, as some books says first trimester and some books say after first trimester. So can you just clarify them?
the folic acid has to be started immediately once the pregnancy is confirmed, and it will be giving throughout the first trimester. And first trimester, that means after the 12 weeks, again the iron folic acid, it's a mix of iron and folic acid that will be given during pregnancy, and even after the delivery also it will be continued.
During pregnancy, I think Dr. Vimla, you can look into it. During pregnancy, teeth sensation and itching skin are there. Then what we should advise in COVID-19, during COVID-19? I think it is same, but they would like to have an answer for it.
So during pregnancy, if there is itching, it's I hope it's whole body itching they are talking about.
Yes,
no?
skin itching, yeah.
Skin itching. So the itching is because of the pregnancy itself, and it has to be, it is not related with COVID, and it has to be managed as that for a normal itching which happens in a woman. And if it is too much, which we call as gravida pruritus, it is like a condition where the liver involvement, and there is a biochemistry inside the body which changes the some of the liver like bile accumulation happens, so that there is a specific treatment to that. Otherwise, normal itching can happen in the second and third trimester of the pregnancy, and it is simply managed with local applications of we have soothing agents that can be given, and cetirizine can be administered to the women. Otherwise, if it is too much and she is not able to, like whole day she is itching, and there are like issues like in the night also she is not able to sleep, then she needs to be investigated, and proper treatment for that is as per the recommendations.
Okay, thank you. There's a lot of questions on magnesium sulfate. They want to have a clarification. So anything we want to say on it, right?
Just one point I would like to stress upon use of magnesium sulfate, because we have gone too much into detail in this presentation. So I think the take home message for the participants is that they should only concentrate on the first dose. The initial management is to the nurses, and later on, like everything has to be under a supervision of a obstetrician, and it is really beyond the purview of this right now. And if it is about the initial dose, then I think Bright can just reiterate what she has already discussed in the presentation.
You know that when it is coming to a service provider view, like a A&M or a staff nurse, they already posted in a lower facility for them the initial dose will be okay, because they have to give the initial loading dose 10 ml, that 10 gram, and then each buttocks, then they have to send them to a higher facility. But many of the students and faculties in the nursing institution, they may be going for their clinical practice to a higher facility also. It can be district hospital or a medical college. So for their better understanding also, we have mentioned about the loading dose of 14 gram. So I 100% agree with Dr. Vimla. The initial, our responsibility to give the initial dose and then send them to a higher facility. And I have seen many of the questions, the students, maybe the faculties, many of they are asking, even though you are saying magnesium sulfate can be given without a prescription of a doctor, many of the facilities it is not allowed. But as per Government of India standing order, the administration of antenatal corticosteroid, the administration of magnesium sulfate, the administration of oxytocins can be do for a nurse or A&M without the prescription. So these are the standing orders which already given or permitted for a nurse. I just want to reiterate that.
Sorry, Bharti, I wanted to add one more point.
Yeah, please, please.
What has happened is that in the last 15 years ago, the Government of India brought out the guidelines for the stilled birth attendants, where they allowed some life-saving meditations to be driven by the nurses, these ANMs and GNMs posted in the peripheral facilities. Now, what has happened is that in reality, when the SPA training was rolled out in 2005, after 2005, then several of the nurses were very scared of administering even the first dose. As Dr. Bimla and Bright both have emphasized, the first dose has to be given. Because earlier, like some of you might have experience of more than 15-20 years, and probably that earlier when a woman used to come to a larger hospital with eclampsia, you can assume that 50% of the women are going to die. But after the magnesium sulfate was initiated in the public health system, which was in many countries, the deaths due to eclampsia have rapidly declined. But that is possible only if we administer the first dose. So suppose somebody is posted in a PHC or subcenter, or even a small CHC where the doctor might not be available there, and then maybe doctor is on a leave today and there is just a senior nurse or posted, they should give the first dose of Metsulf before referring. Don't be scared of giving the first dose. That's what I want to emphasize.
Yeah, with that, the life of a mother and baby will be saved. So that is the important aspects, because many of the time it happens from the lower facility. They're just writing a referral slip without giving the initial dose at least. So they have to do the first dose and then refer the mother to a higher facility.
There are many questions, and I'm glad participants are asking many questions over here, which are relevant at times, but we are not able to answer because of the shortage of time. So President sir, would you like to say something?
Okay. Achha, I think Dr. Kirti would like to give any final comments.
No, I have driven. I just want to also add that, today's webinar and even tomorrow's will be very crucial, because as the corona condition is rapidly present in our country and it is not going to go away in the next 3 to 6 months easily. So the patients are not going to go to larger facilities. The burden on the PHCs, subcenters and CHCs is going to increase, and the nurses will have a very crucial role to play, even more than before. Even before they had a very crucial role to play, because we know that 85% of the maternal deaths can be prevented only if the nurses provided their services properly. If they provide all these basic obstetric emergency services, we can save many lives. That's all I want to say. Thank you.
Dr. Bimla, you want to give final comments?
No, very well done presentation. Congratulations, Bright. And I hope the messages are clear to the participants, and all the best. Thank you.
Sarojit, you want to give any final comments?
No, sir. Thank you, sir.
So Dr. Punita is here. Dr. Punita is here.
Oh, Dr. Punita, sorry. Dr. Punita.
Yes, the time is up, so I don't want to take much time. I just wanted to say only one point regarding the testing. I know the testing for the pregnant women is similar as per the rules, as per the guidelines. It says similar to any other general population, but many studies are coming up now as a high risk groups. They also have to be screened and tested, because very recently a study in New York says that 80% of them are asymptomatic, but they were positive. So probably newer knowledge is coming up in terms of it. And also this A&M dealing with all this in the primary health center, all the pregnant women, they need to be reiterated in terms of the PPE and the basic precautions that need to be taken, because that is going to be a very, very big challenge in our country for the future too. I think that's all I had to say. It was a very good presentation. Thank you.
Okay. Bright, final comments.
Sir, I have seen many questions that maybe students, they are asking much detail about what is hydatidiform, mole, ectopic pregnancy. We know that the session is very extensive and we will not be go to much detail, because our aim was to give provide basic emergency care, especially in the current situation. Whenever a woman comes to a facility, what are the important measures which we can take and save their life? That was we focused. And only that's all, sir. So that's why we couldn't go much detail in a micro level. So.
Yes. It's not a class teaching, not a theory teaching, but
yes,
during the COVID-19, how we are going to have an emergency care. Okay, thank you, Madam President.
See, you all understand that this is a very, very important session, and especially in continuation of with what Dr. Kirti said. I think you all know that every day the Government of India at 4 p.m. The Government of India and Ministry of Home Affairs and ICMRs, they have a briefing, press briefing. And yesterday, the question came up about the maternal and child health services. the press was asking the Ministry of Health, when all the people with the, especially ANMs and other health providers are busy with the COVID survey and all these things, so they are not attending to the maternal and child health services. So very categorically, our the press briefing from the Ministry of Health, they said there is a standing instruction has been sent to all the states that essential services include the maternal and child health services. So therefore, you should not have any doubt that because during this COVID period, this will not be given a priority and all. No, this is a priority area which has been instructed to all the state governments. They have to take care. This is very, very important. So therefore, the session is where I know that it's an extensive session, and a lot of questions the participants were asking. And we will, as every day we are telling that we are bringing these the questions in the form of the FAQs shortly, and so that it will be accessible to you people to ensure that this can be covered. So, thank you again. We'll see you tomorrow at 11 o'clock tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you. Namaste. See you tomorrow at 11 a.m. And thank you for participating in huge numbers. It just encourages us to do more webinars for you. Thank you. Thank you, Pearl. Thank you, Dr. Vimla. Thank you, Dr. Kirti, Dr. Punita, Bright. Thank you very much, sir, President, sir. Thank you, sir.